Good morning, junior detectives. I'm Daniel Smith, Thomas Haney Police Department, and here we're going to teach you non-destructive entry. Today we're going to be showing you the basics of how to get into your basic training lock using your tension wrench and your standard hook pick. Alrighty, detectives, let's take a look at your standard pin tumbler lock system. This is what it looks like from the front, and you're probably familiar with it as it is by far the most common locking system. You probably use it for your locker, your house, your front door, your classroom that you're watching this in. If we peel back the front face, the inner workings will look something like this. There's the red pin, that's your key pin, the blue pin, that's your Bible pin, the spring on top. The circle in the center is your plug or your tumbler, and then there's the housing around that. As you can see from the diagram now, currently the Bible pin is what's preventing the lock from turning. If you have the wrong key in the lock, either the Bible pin or the key pin will meet up with the shear line, not allowing the lock to turn. The shear line is simply the space between the plug and the housing of the lock. Once the pins are properly held to the shear line with the correct key as seen here from the front and the side, you will be able to turn your lock, unlocking your door, padlock, etc. Today we are going to take a look at how to manipulate locks so that you can open them with a turning tool and basic hook. Lockpicking in itself is actually quite simple, but it can take a very long time to master. The basics of it is, you want to slide the turning tool into the bottom of the keyway, as demonstrated here, apply light tension, and it's only about the same amount of pressure as it would take to put a piece of paper up against the wall. And then once you have tension, you're going to be looking through the lock using your pick to find pins that are binding. What that means simply is the pin will not be under spring tension. So if you take your pick, you put it in the lock, and you feel each of those pins, they'll drop back down except for the one that is binding. Pins will bind because of slight manufacturing defects in the lock manufacturing process. The chambers that the pins are held in are not all perfectly at the exact same spot, and as such, they will rub against the side of the housing of the lock as you apply tension. We are going to use that defect to be able to open these locks. Once you have found the pin that is binding, all you have to do is simply put your pick under that pin and raise it until you can feel or hear a slight click. That click will be the pin setting into the shear line. Once you've done it with the first pin that is binding, you just want to keep looking in the lock for the next pin that is binding. Once all pins have been set to the shear line, the lock will turn open. This may sound daunting at first, but trust me, it's not difficult. You have an acrylic lock in front of you to try this out with, so you can see the inner workings of the lock as you go. The one thing to be cautious of is oversetting a pin. What that means is when your key pin is past the shear line of the lock, your key pin will now be stopping the lock from turning. If this happens, don't worry, just release tension, all of your pins will drop back down and reset, and you can try it again. Just be careful, use light tension on your tension wrench, and use light pressure on your pick. If you do find that the pins aren't moving when they're binding, you're probably using too much pressure on your tension wrench. If you're finding that nothing is binding, you're probably going too light. Let's take a look at what picking a lock would actually look like. Now that we know how a lock works, let's get started picking it. You want to take your tension wrench and put it in the bottom of the keyway of the lock and apply clockwise tension to these padlocks. Once you have light tension on it, you want to take your standard hook pick, insert it into the lock, and start looking for the key pin that is binding. As you can hopefully see, all of these are loose, so they aren't our binders. We want to keep looking until we find the one at the back that is binding. We've set these two, they're at the shear line. Now we want to go there, little click, little click, little click, little click, and we have it open. Let's do that again. You want to take your tension wrench, put it into the bottom of the keyway, apply light clockwise tension, just about the same pressure that you would need to hold a piece of paper up against a wall. It's not hard, it's not very much. You want to take your standard hook pick, You're going to go in looking pin by pin, looking for the one that gives you some resistance as you're going, not the springy one. You want to find the one that's binding for you. For me, it's starting at the back, but that might be different for you as you're picking. And you want to just move each pin until you feel the click of it setting. And then once all pins are set, it'll pick right open for you. It's not too hard with the acrylic locks. You can see what you're doing. You want to be careful not to overset pins. If you can see the shear line, it's overset, and you want to release tension to let those pins spring back down. Happy picking. Thank you for watching. And just remember, this video was for instructional purposes only. Do not pick any locks that you do not have explicit permission from the Thomas Haney Police Department to pick. Thanks. Best of luck.